Clint Eastwood was buying coffee when elderly veteran counted coins for bread, came up short. Cashier said, "Put something back." What Clint did next and what the veteran said when he realized who paid left entire store silent. It was a Tuesday morning in September 2018 and Clint Eastwood stopped at a Safeway grocery store in Carmel, California to pick up coffee before heading to his office. He was dressed casually, jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and a baseball cap, and moved through the store with the same unassuming demeanor he brought to everything, just another customer on a Tuesday morning. The store was moderately busy with the usual morning crowd, people grabbing breakfast items, picking up forgotten groceries, stopping in on their way to work. Clint selected his coffee, grabbed a newspaper, and headed to the checkout lanes. He chose lane 3, which had only one person ahead of him, an elderly man, probably in his late 70s or early 80s, wearing a worn Army veteran baseball cap and a jacket that had seen better days. The man had a small basket with basic items, a loaf of bread, a carton of eggs, a gallon of milk, and a small package of lunch meat. The kind of modest shopping you do when you're buying just enough to get through the next few days. The cashier, a young woman in her early 20s named Ashley, scanned the items. "That'll be $18.73, she said, her tone professionally neutral. The elderly veteran reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He opened it and Clint could see from his position in line that the wallet was nearly empty, no bills visible, just some coins in the coin pocket. The man's face, which had been calm a moment before, registered concern. "I thought I had more," the veteran said quietly, more to himself than to Ashley. He began pulling out coins, quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, and counting them carefully on the counter. Ashley waited, but her expression showed she'd seen this before and wasn't particularly patient about it. Other customers were beginning to line up behind Clint. Lane 3 was backing up. The veteran counted slowly, his weathered hands moving deliberately through the pile of change. 13, 14, 15, 16. He reached the end of his coins. $16.26. He looked up at Ashley and Clint could see the embarrassment beginning to color the man's face. "I'm short," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I thought I had 18. Ashley sighed, not loudly, but audibly enough that the veteran noticed. "Sir, you're $2.47 short. You'll need to put something back." The man looked down at his modest groceries, bread, eggs, milk, lunch meat, the basics, nothing extravagant, nothing unnecessary, just food. "The lunch meat," he said quietly, "I'll put that back." Ashley picked up the package to void it from the transaction, but the veteran stopped her. "Wait, how much is the milk?" $3.49, Ashley said, her patience clearly thinning as the line behind them grew. The veteran did the math in his head. "And the bread?" $2.79. He stood there for a moment trying to figure out what combination of items he could afford with his $16.26. The embarrassment on his face was deepening and his hands, which had been steady while counting coins, had developed a slight tremor. Behind Clint, someone in line muttered something under their breath about people holding up the line. Clint watched this unfold with growing recognition of what he was seeing. This wasn't someone being careless with money or trying to buy luxury items they couldn't afford. This was a man trying to buy basic food and coming up short, not by much, but enough that it mattered. The worn Army veteran cap wasn't a fashion statement. The careful coin counting wasn't about being cheap. This was someone surviving on a fixed income that didn't quite stretch far enough. The veteran made his decision. "I'll just take the bread and eggs. Put the milk and meat back." As Ashley began voiding items, Clint stepped forward and placed his coffee and newspaper on the belt behind the veteran's remaining items. Then he spoke, his voice calm and clear enough for the veteran and Ashley to hear. "Ring it all up together, his items and mine." The veteran turned, confused. "I'm sorry." "Ring up all of it," Clint said to Ashley. "Everything he has plus my coffee and paper, one transaction." Ashley looked uncertain. The veteran looked from Clint to Ashley and back to Clint. "Sir, I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything," Clint said gently but firmly. "I'm buying coffee, you're buying groceries," the cashier's ringing it up. "That's all that's happening here." "But I can't pay you back," the veteran said, his voice breaking slightly. I'm not asking you to pay me back," Clint interrupted. "I'm just buying my coffee. Your groceries happen to be in front of mine, so they're going through together. That's how checkout lines work." The veteran stood there trying to process what was happening. His embarrassment was now mixing with something else, disbelief, gratitude, confusion about how to respond. Ashley, who'd been watching this exchange, seemed to suddenly recognize something. She looked at Clint more carefully and her eyes widened slightly. She knew who he was, but she said nothing, simply nodding and scanning the milk and lunch meat back into the transaction, adding Clint's items, and totaling everything. 22.57, she said quietly. Clint handed her his card. As the transaction processed, he turned to the veteran. "What branch?" The veteran, still processing what was happening, responded automatically to a question he'd answered countless times. "Army, Vietnam, 68 to 70. "Thank you for your service," Clint said simply. The veteran nodded, but his attention was still on what had just happened with his groceries. "Sir, this is very kind, but you should take your groceries and have a good day," Clint said. "That's what you should do." Ashley handed Clint his receipt and card. She also handed a separate receipt to the veteran, his items paid for, ready to go. The veteran took the receipt, looked at it, and then looked at Clint, really looked at him for the first time. There was a moment, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, where recognition slowly spread across the veteran's face. The baseball cap, the casual clothes, the unassuming manner hadn't hidden who he was, just delayed the recognition. "Are you?" the veteran started, then stopped. "You're Clint Eastwood." Clint gave a small nod. "Just picking up coffee." The veteran's eyes filled with tears. His voice, which had been embarrassed and quiet when dealing with his shortage of money, came out thick with emotion. "I can't believe thank you, not just for this," he gestured to the groceries, "but for everything. Your movies got me through some hard times. After I got back from Vietnam, things were rough. It wasn't easy. But I'd watch your westerns and Dirty Harry and it reminded me that you could be tough and still have principles, that you could go through hell and come out the other side." Clint listened, and for the first time since the interaction started, his expression softened noticeably. "You went through real hell." "I just played characters who went through fictional versions. What you did matters a lot more than anything I've done on screen." "No, sir," the veteran said, shaking his head. "You gave people like me something to hold on to. That matters." By now, everyone in the immediate area, Ashley the cashier, the customers in line behind Clint, the bagger helping at the end of the lane, people in neighboring checkout lines, had stopped what they were doing. They were watching this moment unfold. Several had recognized Clint. A few had their phones out, but none were being intrusive. They were simply witnessing something genuine. The veteran, whose name Clint learned was James Patterson, wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry for getting emotional. I live on a fixed income, disability from the VA. It's enough most days, but sometimes the timing of when bills hit versus when the check comes. Today was one of those days where I needed food, but the money wasn't quite there yet. And I was standing here counting coins feeling like I'd failed somehow." And then he couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "You didn't fail anything," Clint said firmly. "You served your country. You're dealing with a system that doesn't always take care of its veterans the way it should. That's not failure. That's just reality being harder than it ought to be." An older woman who'd been waiting in line behind Clint stepped forward and handed James a $20 bill. "For later," she said simply, "when the timing is off again." James tried to protest, but she closed his hand around the bill. My father was in World War II. Someone helped him once when he needed it. This is me paying that forward. Then, something remarkable happened. Other customers started approaching, not crowding James or making a spectacle, but quietly offering help. A man in a business suit pulled out a $50 bill. A woman with 2 kids added a $20 bill. The bagger, who couldn't have been making much more than minimum wage, pulled out a $10 bill. Within 2 minutes, James was standing at the checkout with over $200 in cash that strangers had handed him, plus his groceries paid for, in a grocery store that had gone from a place of embarrassment to a place of overwhelming human kindness. Ashley, the cashier, was crying quietly as she watched. She reached under her register and pulled out a Safeway gift card. "This is from employee discretionary funds," she said, though Clint suspected she was paying for it herself. "It's got $25 on it for next time." James couldn't speak. He stood there, this elderly veteran who'd come in to buy bread with coins and was leaving with his groceries paid for, $200 in cash, a gift card, and a store full of people who just reminded him that kindness exists. Clint picked up his coffee and newspaper. As he started to walk toward the exit, James called after him. "Mr. Eastwood, I'll never forget this, never." Clint turned back. "Just take care of yourself, James, and thank you again for your service." As Clint left the store, the other customers began to disperse, returning to their shopping or checking out. But the atmosphere in the store had shifted. People were smiling at each other, making eye contact in a way that doesn't usually happen in grocery stores. The moment had created a brief community out of strangers. Ashley, still emotional, told her manager what had happened. By that afternoon, Safeway's corporate office had heard the story. By that evening, they'd established a Veterans Assistance Program at that store, a discreet fund that employees could access to help veterans who came up short at checkout. James Patterson used the money people had given him to not just buy food, but to get ahead on a utility bill that had been worrying him. He came back to that same Safeway every week after that, and each time, employees and regular customers would greet him warmly. The store had adopted him in a way, making sure he always had what he needed. The few customers who'd recorded parts of the interaction didn't post the video publicly out of respect for James's dignity, but they shared it privately, and the story spread through Carmel's small community. It became one of those stories that people tell as an example of humanity at its best, not just Clint's generosity, but the way it sparked generosity in everyone watching. 6 months later, James Patterson passed away in his sleep. Peacefully, in his apartment, not in want of anything. At his funeral, over 50 people attended, including several from that day at Safeway. His nephew, who gave the eulogy, mentioned the grocery store incident. "Uncle James told me that day changed how he saw his final years," the nephew said. He'd been feeling forgotten, invisible, like his service and his struggles didn't matter to anyone. And then, a store full of strangers reminded him that he mattered. That we all matter. That when we see someone struggling, we can choose to help rather than judge. He lived his last months differently because of that day. Less afraid, more hopeful, more connected to his community. Clint heard about James's passing through a mutual acquaintance and sent flowers to the funeral. The card read simply, "It was an honor to buy you coffee that day. Thank you for everything you gave to this country. Clint." The story has become part of Carmel lore, the day Clint Eastwood paid for a veteran's groceries and sparked a chain reaction of kindness that lasted far beyond that single morning. The Safeway still has the Veterans Assistance Fund, named in James Patterson's honor, and it's helped hundreds of veterans in the years since. And every time someone shares the story, they emphasize the same lesson James himself articulated to his nephew. We're all just trying to get through our days. Some days are harder than others. On those hard days, the difference between despair and hope can be as small as someone stepping up and saying, "I've got this. You're not alone." That's what real strength looks like, not in movies, in a grocery store checkout line on a Tuesday morning. If this story of a chance encounter turned into community compassion, of a veteran's dignity honored rather than diminished, and of how one act of kindness can ripple through an entire community moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with anyone who's ever struggled to make ends meet, anyone who served their country, or anyone who needs a reminder that small acts of human kindness can have enormous impact. Have you witnessed or experienced unexpected generosity? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more true stories about the power of compassion.